Pleasure to welcome to the Lax Goalie Rap podcast. It's Katie Greenwood, plays for Team England, played for Team England in the World Championships. Katie, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited.
Absolutely. Well, before we hit record, you were saying that you started following Lax Goalie Rat in 2015. I was doing the math. I started Lax Goalie Rat in 2015. So you had to be one of the very first followers. So thank you so much for the support.
It's been a long time, but I've also learned so much over the years, and not having like a dedicated goalie coach in my career, I thought it was really important to like stay up to date with what was happening around me. And at that time I was out of the game. So it's still nice to just read what was happening. And it's been an incredible asset now for me as a player and as a coach.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I 100% agree. I'd love to hear your story. Let's dig into your story a little bit. Going all the way back. You remember that very first time you jumped into goal?
Not really, actually. I'm going to be completely honest. Like I played a little bit at youth league. Like everybody has to jump in goal once in a while, pay your dues. It's like you're a tiny little seventh grader and you're just forced in there. But I didn't remember like hating it. That was, I think, the key part of it. Like I was like, yeah, I guess I could do this. But I actually didn't get serious about goalie until I was in high school. So I was in ninth grade and I tried out for the team, Leonardtown High School, shout out. Woo. And
Leonardtown.
I was not exactly an athletic kid, but I really desperately wanted to be a part of a team. So after the tryout, my coach came up to me and was like, Katie, we really loved everything that you gave us, but unfortunately, you just probably won't make the team. However, I'm like cornered in the art room. Like, however, we know that you played goalie at youth rec league, and if you want to be on the team, you can be our goalie. And I don't even think I like hesitated. I was just like, yeah, okay, like let's do this. This is what I'm going to be. This is who I am. And I went home and told my parents, and I was really excited. And my parents were like, yeah, okay, so it's going to be like the time you wanted to play guitar. And it lasted about a month and a half. But yeah, it's ever since then, I didn't change or try to change from that point. I was a goalie through and through.
Love it. What would you say to like a young goalie or a young athlete, for that matter, who's kind of in your situation, where unfortunately they're not blessed with all that much athletic talent? Not saying that you're not, but just this hypothetical scenario here. And they really want to play, right? They really want to play, and they go out for the team, and it's like they don't make it, right? That could be a real tough situation. So what,
Absolutely.
like, I don't know, what would you say to a goalie in that situation right now?
So still being a coach, one of the things that I really emphasize is, one, you get a ton of playing time, right? You will end up knowing the game better than some of the people on the field because you're constantly watching and kind of at the epicenter.
As a
but
goalie.
You're also, as a goalie.
Right.
But you are a catalyst for a lot of amazing things in the game. So like you could be the turning point in momentum. And you're also the biggest cheerleader on the team, right? There's a chance for you to take control, to show a lot of different personal attributes that maybe you wouldn't necessarily get to use running up and down the field. And that's what I try to convey is you don't have to be an amazing lacrosse player and feel fulfilled by playing necessarily on the field. You can find a beautiful personal performance within the goal.
Yeah. Love that. Yeah. I've talked about it on the podcast before. I think there's something just so amazing about using the lacrosse goalie position sort of as a vehicle to like learn all these other skills and just to improve yourself as a young man or a young woman, because it's challenging, right? It's challenging. And going through this process, this endeavor that we do, and I'm sure you've learned many skills along the way, have you not?
Yeah, absolutely. And for me, it's been a real personal journey, and it's not necessarily been like the actual physical skills that I've learned on the field. Like, yes, I can clear ball. Yes, I can stop it, all of that stuff. But, I've learned a lot about my temperament and how I speak to people and how can I get the best out of the people around me. And that was definitely something that came to light. Like, I think I learned the most about myself at the World Cup this year. in that respect, like finding out who I really was when maybe things didn't go my way, or when I was at my highest highs, how was I gonna bring the people up around me without them feeling like, well, yeah, you're happy, but I'm not. And that was for me the biggest thing this year, and actually out of my entire career.
Yeah. Yeah. Just before I ask the next question, that same with me. I mean, not so much, like one of the main things that I talk about, with goalies is just this concept of like moving on, right? You're going to get
Yeah.
scored on, right? And just this idea of like, yeah, all right, I'm going to make adjustments, right? As much as I can, but that play's done with. No amount of worrying about that play will ever bring that goal back. I now need to focus on the next play. And just that idea helps me so much in life, right? Because you're
Yeah,
going to have
absolutely.
downs, and it's like, do you spend all day sulking about that down, or do you say like, okay, cool, like let's move on?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's kind of like, how are you going to react to those situations in your normal life? If someone, if you're in school still, if you get a bad grade, okay, well, fine, you know what to do next time. And I take that mentality. Like, there is probably things I could have done in the goal that would have helped me, but I didn't that time. And it's
Yeah.
fine, because it's not the end of the world. It's not the end of the game. Like, there's so many other factors that go into that. Some of them I can control, and some of them I can't. Sometimes they're just a really good shooter, and you can't help it. And you have to remember, like, it is not you as a goalie. Like, there's nothing else that you could have done. And it's recognizing that you've done and given everything that you can in that moment, and just be happy with that. Maybe not happy is the word, but be content with what
Mm-hmm.
you've given,
Mm-hmm.
and hopefully other people will be content with that as well.
Yeah, I love that. That's beautiful. Beautiful stuff. Uh, we'll talk more about the mental game a little bit later, but so you grow up, and I usually ask, what attracts you to the position of goalie? It sounded like for you, it might have been, I wanted to be on the team.
Desperation.
I want to be on the team.
Absolutely was that.
Yeah. And so, by the way, where did you grow up? Because you've got, there's certain, we were talking before we hit record, there's certain words where I hear that British accent, and there's certain words where I don't hear that British accent.
Yeah, I mean, I've lived here long enough where I have a little bit of a British twang. My
Yeah.
family still takes the mick out of me for that. But I grew up in Southern Maryland, so St. Mary's County. There wasn't a whole lot of lacrosse to start with when I was living there. I mean, everybody thinks of Maryland as this big hotbed of lacrosse, and it absolutely is.
Right.
But at the time, like, what was it, like 2004, 2005, when I started playing, there wasn't a whole lot. We had a high school team, and I was on the first rec league when it came to that and stuff like that. But it wasn't like, we weren't a powerhouse by any means. Yeah. We never went to state or anything like that. But Southern Maryland's awesome, and that's where I got my start. So I will always forever be a special place.
Love it. So how did you then? I mean, goalie's a challenging position. We've established that. You jump in there. Because you want to make the team. They have you on the team, and how do you then go about learning how to make saves?
So that was, I mean, back in the day, there wasn't a whole lot out there that was accessible. And so I remember getting on YouTube or the equivalent and watching playback of film of like teams that were playing.
Yeah.
And it was just kind of like, okay, what was that goalie doing? This was kind of the beginning of when everybody was starting to do their video tutorials and everything like that. So I tried to watch as much as I could, because bless my coaches, like they weren't goalie coaches, and I didn't expect them to be, and I wasn't expecting them to, hire someone just for me or the three other goalies. And I wouldn't expect my parents to do that either. So it was kind of self-taught in a lot of ways. A lot of it was intuition, and then it kind of just became, you figure out what works fastest for you. And my style has changed so much over the last 22 years. Like, I watched a clip of myself from high school, and I was like, oh God, like, how did I ever save the ball? But it worked at that time. And when I got to college, it changed and it transitioned. But I was really lucky that every now and then my parents would take me up to watch lacrosse in Northern Maryland. So like at Maryland or Towson or Hopkins or Loyola, like any of those, they were great access. And some really great goalies at the time. And when I went to camp and things like that, taught me a lot of things. Could not tell you what their names were now. It is so long ago, but that was kind of what I had to do. You just kind of figure it out. And that's terrible advice. Like, I would never tell a goalie that now because there's so much at your fingertips. But there was, like, I guess back then, very much like the right way to do things and the wrong way to do things. And I had a little bit of both.
Yeah. I mean, in terms of reviewing video and learning from other goalies and, going to watch other goalies for inspiration, like, those are all very relevant in today's game as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
As is the fact that, like, there are certain, even though lacrosse has grown tremendously, right? There are certain areas and certain teams that still don't have goalie coaches. And so I do think that, as a goalie, it's on you. Like, the information's out there now. Like, that's not a good excuse, right? The information's out there. Like, it's on you to put together like a training program and sort of help your coach you, if that makes sense, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Of course.
So,
and I actually pulled a lot of my inspiration from the men's game. So that was what, if you ever got a glimpse, was going to be on TV every now and then. Yeah. So if you were lucky at like 2 a.m. in the morning, you could watch some lacrosse, and it just happened to be on. And that's where I saw it. And, like, believe it or not, my goalie inspiration was Jesse Schwartzman, because he was like the big guy, and he was all over Lacrosse magazine, especially when I was like in high school. I adored him, and I just thought he was like the greatest thing. And I remember going to watch a Hopkins game in high school, and I was just like, that's what I need to do. And that's kind of where I was like, all right, this is the turning point of how am I going to become a better goalie? So, like, when people ask me like, oh, who did you really, really like in high school? Like, who did you look up to? I was like, well, for me, there wasn't a whole lot of people, but I definitely had a picture of Jesse Schwartzman in goal ripped out of a magazine on my wall. So like, that's it. It's one of those things. I mean, of course, it was like right next to a Matt Danowski picture, which is, a little bit of contention there in that absolute rivalry, but those were, those are my icons. Those men's players were my icons at the time. So yeah, it's crazy.
I've heard that quite a bit amongst women's goalies. It's probably more, you probably hear that more just because the positions are so similar, right? I mean,
absolutely.
Yeah, the game is very different, right? And where we see shots and how the shots come off the stick and the offense and the defense, et cetera, et cetera. But how we make saves, I think you teach the boys the exact same way as you teach the girls.
I completely agree. And I think, unfortunately, at least here in England, and early days in Maryland, where I was from, that wasn't necessarily the mentality. Like, you are seen a little bit more fragile. Thankfully, there's been some like toughening up here, and I've thankfully had a hand in kind of like changing that. And there's a few others of us that have had a hand in changing like the idea that like a women's goalie, you shouldn't really classify it as like a women's goalie or a men's goalie. Like, you're a goalie. Realistically, you should be able to jump in either one. And a lot of us do jump in both. And, the movements are the same. The way you make the save is exactly the same, whether you're quick enough or you can track the ball from a certain distance or out of a certain amount of width is different. But realistically, like, it should be interchangeable. So it's kind of like, get rid of that notion. Boys and girls, men's and women's, like, it should be, absolutely should just be goalies. And that's how you train them no matter what. Yeah,
totally agree. Going back, I wanted to mention that Jesse Schwartzman was also a huge inspiration for me as well. So, and I had him on the podcast and told him that he's a great guy. Because I played at Cal in the MCLA, right? Yeah. And we did a trip out to Maryland to like play some D3 schools and just, and we ended up going to a Hopkins practice. They like invited us to watch the practice. And so there's Jesse Schwartzman. And I was just like, wow, this is what Division I lacrosse goalies is all about and how they train and carry themselves. It was so cool. Anyway, love Jesse Schwartzman was my point there.
Big shout out.
Big shout out. You mentioned your game having, changed over the years. the photo or the video you saw of early you, hardly recognizable. How exactly would you describe that change?
So early days, obviously, was just kind of like, I was a bit of a recluse in the goal. Like I just did whatever made the save. And at times I'm definitely still like that, but it's, I'm obviously now at a point where my body just reacts to it. There's not a whole lot of thinking.
Right.
But when I got to college, so I went to St. Mary's College, Maryland first, and then I actually took a year off my sophomore year and transferred down to Florida Southern. I changed so much in the time that I was at college. I would say though, I was definitely a tap dancer. So like I was one of those goalies that was really hard to like keep still.
Yeah.
I was like constantly moving always, and it wasn't beneficial movement. And I would say up until about 3 years ago, it like took that time to break the habit. It doesn't mean that it didn't like hurt me in a sense. Like I actually was really great outside of the goal, and I'm really comfortable outside of the goal. And I think being able to shift around a lot and move helped me with the cross crease and whatnot. However, like on a free position, I would bite so early, and I still bite early. I mean, there's an awful video of Kayla Trainer like faking me 5 times, and I'm just like jumping around and dancing, and that's still, that's my kryptonite. I will bite, and I don't care who knows it, like whatever. But in that time, I've gone from playing a really flat arc to now I play quite a high arc, but I also now base it off of the team that we're playing. So, if I know a team is going to be shooting really close in, I'm going to pick that middle ground for me where I know I can step up real hard. If I know that they're going to be shooting from the outside, I might take that step up and play even higher, because then it just cuts down my angles a little bit more.
Yeah.
It is so dependent on the players that I am going against. And I have the luxury of being able to like see them ahead of time and having played against them prior to like major tournaments. But I'm still very active. Like I play sixes, and that's a huge like contributor to my style. I love to be outside of the goal. Like it's fun.
Yeah.
It's great. Like love an interception. I love a ground ball. Like use me up the field on the clear. I don't really care. There's kind of like that fearlessness, and use the skills that I've attained over the last, like, I don't know, 10 years of being more confident with like my stick skills.
Love it. I also love to play out of the crease, right? Play out of the crease. I think that like, in today's game, if a goalie can earn a ground ball, chase a shot out, right? Anything you can do to get possession for your team is just as good as a save, right? And it sounds like you share that same mentality, and also try and teach that with kids.
Yeah, of course. I mean, when I look back at my stats over the last couple of years, I used to get really hung up on like what my save percentage was, but then I'd look at a game and, sometimes it's a pretty low scoring game. You only get a couple of shots on you, so your percentage drops. But then I would look at like, okay, well, I got 4 ground balls and I got 2 interceptions, and I made it up to halfway and didn't get absolutely stripped of the ball. So for me, that's really important. And I think we need to teach goalies that you are more than your save percentage. And if anyone's telling you that, that's what you've got to have to be successful, like throw it completely out the window, because there's going to be games where your save percentage just doesn't work, and it's fine. Like people are going to find ways to beat you, but you have to like battle back. And that battle is what is the most important to me. Like you can't teach that. Right. And if you've got a kid that's willing to like do whatever it takes, that to me, you can teach the other stuff, but you can't teach the grit. You can't teach the hustle.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I sponsor Emily Sterling, women's goalie of the year, right? And she we were doing this like live Q&A, and she said like, I honestly didn't even know save percentage was a thing until I got to college. Like I didn't know people like counted the number of shots and goals against. And she's like, and guess what? I'm so grateful that I didn't know that, because if I'd be in the exact same scenario that these kids are in right now, where it's like, oh, I only saved it at 50% and this other girl saved it at 55, right? Just, playing this numbers game instead of concentrating on the results of the game, right? Or even just the process, not even the results of the game of like, right? I mean, just the work you're putting in and the things that you can control. So I love that point. I love that point that you brought up there. Well, I love it. All right. Talk to me about this high arc, because I feel like it's definitely, you know, I don't know. There's a lot of talk about it. Like, do I play flat? Do I play high?
Mm,
I feel like, I feel like one, goalies should try both just to get a feel for it, even if you end up
yeah,
doing one or
absolutely.
the other. But I think there is, like, in today's game, there is uh room to have this like hybrid arc where like you're playing flat a lot of the time, right? And then in certain
Yeah.
scenarios when they present themselves, I am going to come up, cut down that angle so that I don't have to make that move or even just surprise the shooter. How do you if there's a young goalie thinking about their arc play, what would you say to them?
First of all, for me, like when I teach my goalies, it is a little bit dependent on how big they are.
Yeah.
So if I've got a tiny sixth grader, I'm gonna actually try and get them to play higher. Not necessarily like, I mean, yes, it's gonna make them bigger. They're gonna fill a space a little bit more, but it just gets them a little bit more confident in that like higher zone. So our crease is actually slightly bigger in the UK and in international. So there's a lot of space to play with. And so playing a high arc is completely possible all the time. If I have someone that is big and tall and everything I wish I was, then they've got they've got like a little bit more freedom in what they can do. I very much teach that like when you're not staring down the middle of the fields, like you've got some give and take. And, when I'm facing out to the right, I usually will probably play a little bit more flat. But if I'm right in the middle, especially if it's like a free position, I'm going to step up on my line
Yeah.
because I know that makes me bigger. And even if maybe I'm not feeling the most confident about what's going to happen next, I look a little bit more confident because I've taken that step out and I'm there. That doesn't mean that I'm like jumping out at them or I'm standing right toe on the crease, but just a little bit to know that that's where I am. I'm a little bit higher. And I think it's really important for the kids to see that. So like what I have them do is I have them stand on that fan and I put myself in the position either where they were standing or where I'd like them to stand. And they can
Mm-hmm.
then see how much angle it really cuts down on. And that like
Right.
the visual is so important. And equally like, we do a bit of string saving. So we tie string on the posts and they can see that like point an arrow and they can see the areas where maybe they can move a little bit more flat versus the areas where they're going to need to like come out a bit more and take up that space. But ultimately it's they're going to evolve into it and their game's going to change so much from the point that they start to the point where they end
Yeah.
that actually like teach them everything. And you'll see as a coach and they'll feel as a player which one is working best for them.
Mm-hmm.
um Sometimes you have that odd kid that's like, no, 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 I think I'm better when I'm literally standing in the goal. And you have to convince them and maybe like plant the idea and make it theirs that if they stand in a different position, like it's going to be more successful. So you kind of have to trick them into it. But yeah, it's like let them play with it. Like let them be a little bit bold with what they're doing. And then if they get burnt on it, then they know they need to adjust. And then you as a coach, like help them do that. Like that's your job. You need to be able to analyze what they're doing in real time so that they feel confident that they can take those risks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And we do that with Inception, right? Get into their dream,
Yeah,
get into their dreams and be like, this was
exactly.
your idea, the high arc.
You love this.
Yeah, I've seen some goalies. Yeah, I mean, they're like literally in the goal, and I'm like, okay,
Yeah,
that's too deep. That's too deep.
I
I
think
mean,
that's
I
more of a fear thing. Like
you
I
think
think
so?
I think some of it is fear and I think it's also a little like I had a really young goalie come up to me and she goes, "Well, if I stand further back in the goal, then I have more time." And I'm like, "Well, okay, I get your logic and I understand that and I completely like 100% understand that to make you feel better about yourself. However, as you get better as a player, it's not going to make a real difference in terms of the speed of the shot that's coming at you. Like if I thought standing in the goal on the baseline against, Charlotte North or Kayla Trainer was going to make me save it better, then I would have done it. But I know it's not going to make a difference. And you have to convince them that, that isn't what it's going to be. So it's lack of confidence in my eyes. It's the funny, young thinking process. And some of it is a little bit of fear, because a lot of those goalies you see stand on the line, especially if they're small here in England, they tend to turn away.
Yeah.
And you just kind of either have to break that habit, or they're just not a goalie, and that's okay. Like, let them admit that and move on.
Yeah. Yeah, I posted the Colin, for who, you know, is part of the Lacrosse network. Like, I posted a reel of him like jumping in the goal for the first time, right?
Yeah,
it's probably how you and I were when we first started, but like his was so exaggerated. He like turns his entire, like, the ball's coming 5-hole, right? You know, instead of exploding down, top hand, get your hips down, smother that ball. He like turns his entire body away from the ball, as most any normal human would do.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so you got to train that out of them, right? You got to train that fear response out of them. How would you recommend doing that?
I always start with tennis balls, like always, because that builds their confidence with the actual movements. And if you can't build confidence in the movements, then you're never going to have someone that is willing to like stay strong in the goal, if you know what I mean. So if you like, they know that they're going to get hit by the ball, like make that aware, and they will figure that out really quickly. However, the tennis balls just really helps with building their core movements. And then when they do get the regular ball in a game, they'll see that it doesn't make a difference what you train with, as long as you're able to do those motions. Because for them, it's like developing that muscle memory. And even now, like, I prefer to train with a tennis ball. Like, yes, it's not the same feel, and there's a rebound, and it's a lot harder for your shooter to get quite as much speed on it. But I'm focusing on the movement and the motion. And for me, you know, especially leading up to the World Cup, I didn't want to get racked in the shin or the knee, and then that take me out for however much time, because I'm old and I bruise really easily now. So, you know, it is tennis balls for me, like tennis balls all the way. They'll never die in my eyes. Like, use them, abuse them. Like, there's so much that you can do with them to build confidence in those kids, and any goalie really. Yeah,
totally. I mean, I'd recommend using tennis balls at any age, like you said. I mean, especially as a young kid, you know, you're having a great training session, and then you take one like right off the shin bone, or you take a lacrosse ball right off the kneecap, and you're just like, I'm done. I don't want to be here anymore. Right. You know, so it kind of just ruins the training session in many ways.
Even for me, that's like still sometimes the case. Like, we'll go through a whole England weekend, and we have, she's gonna hate me for saying, we have a thing called free position fun before the World Cup, and it's basically just so everybody could practice either free positions or the setup, or like what we wanted to do when the whistle went, where we're going to adjust ourselves. And it was so hardcore, because I'd make it through a whole weekend of like intense training, not getting hit, or like not being absolutely turned to mush, and then I'd get to the last 3 minutes, and there it was, like I would get hit, and it was just so painful. I'm like, I actually ended up hating that every single time it came up, because I knew I was going to get hit. And even though, like, on the field and in a major game, I would never take myself out of a game if I got hit. Like, that would never happen. But that right there, like me being hit in the training, made me just not want to do it. And it can be like a massive confidence knock when you're like, okay, well, that's it. Like, and then you see other goalies being like, well, I'm fine, I got hit, but here we go. So it is, you got to really just kind of ease them into it and know your goalies. Like, some goalies don't care. They'll get hit and they're like, yeah, okay, fine, whatever.
Yeah. Keep
coming. They're like, they have that like Happy Gilmore mentality. And I used to be that way. And then as I got older, I was like, no, I don't need to like get hit constantly to feel like I'm developing. I don't need to do, you know, these crazy shooting drills anymore where it's me one on none. And actually I remember Timmy Troutner was talking about how his warm-ups were like, he's like, okay, I get in, I do my like 10 shots and that's it. I mean, I can't remember exactly what he said, but it was so basic. And he was like, that's my warm up, and I don't want anything else. And I don't want to do anything else, because that's what gets me like confident. And after I started kind of like treating myself the same way, I saw a huge shift in like the way I was playing and what I was confident in and stuff like that.
Yeah, 100% agree. 100% agree. Now, do you what's your stance on padding, extra padding, shin guards, maybe football pants, thigh pads?
I am a shin guard advocate till the day that I die. I will die on the hill. I don't care what anyone says to me.
Yeah.
But I wear like really small soccer shin guards.
Okay.
Football for my England people, they'll rip me apart if I just say soccer. Um, so I wear really small ones, and I wear them all the time when it comes to training. There's not a time when I don't, unless I forget them. And even then I'm like, okay, well, I'll get in for these drills. But I have like over the years had the unfortunate choices of going without shin guards, especially in my college years. And that really affected my shins as I got older.
Yeah.
So now if I get hit, even sometimes with a shin guard, especially at the pace that like some of these women are putting on the ball, like unreal, you get hit and it's like having an egg on my shin, and it's so painful and it's just not worth it anymore.
Right.
And I think if we push our younger goalies to at least wear the padding and the protection, especially in their training sessions, but it's more likely to get hit, then that is going to save them the trouble down the line. Like, I cringe when I see really young goalies at these tournaments, and like, I get the whole badge of honor, like you get your bruises, you don't wear your shin guards, like it's the cool thing to do. But really, in 15 years time, you're kind of going to hate yourself, especially if you continue playing at that really high level. Like, there were times when I'd get hit in the shin and I was done for the rest of the day, because for me, they're basically like glass now. But I'm going to still play. I'm still going to wear my shin guards. And sometimes it's only one shin guard in a game. If, I was hit badly, I make sure that I put the protection on. I don't wear any like upper leg pads. I think it is important for younger goalies to wear like pelvic protection, especially like through college as shots get harder. I know in theory you shouldn't be getting hit as much as the players you're going against are better. However, it does happen. And a lot of the chest protectors, as great as they are now, like I love that my chest protector is tiny. However, I also know it doesn't offer me a lot of protection other than right where my heart is. And unfortunately, like a lot of the stuff that we wear isn't catered towards women. It doesn't fit women very well and our shape. And that's probably also like a bit of a deterrent. Like, I constantly see on message boards, like, what's the chest protector that my daughter should buy? Like, this one isn't working for her. None of them fit right. And for me, I'd love to see companies cater a little bit more to that aspect. Like, yes, we are all goalies. However, you shouldn't expect everything to fit one form. Like, I think there needs to be a little bit of deviation in terms of fit. And I know like STX did that a couple of years ago and changed like some of the fits for the women. But again, those aren't as popular. You don't see a lot of like elite goalies wearing those chest protectors.
Yeah. Well, they had the Sultra, which was like for women. I'll be honest, I don't know what was different. What are you talking about with the fit? Is it like the chest area that we're talking about?
So like I'm like lucky in that sense. There's not a whole lot. So for me, it's flat. But I have friends who have put on, like, I wore the STX, the white one. I don't know why I can't think of the numbers right now.
Shield 600. Yeah.
500,000. I wore that one for a while and I really loved it. But then I also had teammates who wore it and it would ride up constantly into their throat because it just didn't fit their chest the way that they needed it to.
Right.
I now wear a Warrior, and that one fits a little bit better for some goalies. But again, like, there's no motion in it, so like the fit just isn't necessarily like naturally conducive to like a female body. And I think that goes like, do you think sometimes the chest protectors, especially for catered towards younger goalies, like they do need to come a little bit lower? And the Sultra was great for that because like it had the clip around the back, like of the hips. And And that was great, but now they don't really do that anymore. It's like elite or nothing, you know what I mean? Which
Right.
is a little bit unfortunate because it can't all be catered towards that. It just makes it a little bit inaccessible. And parents are always concerned about like their kids getting hit. And you gotta take care of them. You have to make sure that what you're putting out is fitting enough to make sure it's the right option.
Yeah. So what chest pad do you recommend for the young girls? Is it the Warrior one?
So I wear the Warrior Nemesis at the minute.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I really love that. It actually reminds me of the Gate one that I wore like all through high school, just a little bit better equipped padding wise.
Yeah.
That was like basically wearing a sheet when I was younger. I don't know how I like made it through my goalie career. Like, but yeah, I wear the Warrior Nemesis one. Really love it. I wore it all through the World Cup and the World Games, and can't recommend it like more than I already have.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Let's talk about the World Cup and the World Games if we could.
Yeah, absolutely.
Tremendous. It was tremendous. I got to be honest. I 2 years ago, maybe 1 year ago, I didn't really watch that much women's lacrosse. I was like 90%, 95% men's lacrosse. And then last year I sponsored a couple women's goalies and really got into women's lacrosse. And then the world championships, where it's just like, it exploded for me, where it was just like, it was so cool. I loved watching it. Yeah, it was just so well done. You got Joe Beninati, what's the announcer's name? Beninati, I think is his last name, doing the play-by-play. Guy's just a genius. Anyway, how, was it always a dream of yours to play for Team England, or how did that come to be?
No, I'm not gonna like feed people lies. Like I never had any intention to play for England. When I left college, I went and coached here for a year, and then when I went back to St. Mary's College of Maryland, because it's like right down the street from me, and I coached there at their program. But while I was there, that was kind of the beginning of the pro league for the women. And I was asked if I wanted to try out for it. And in the same year, I was kind of asked, would you ever consider Team USA? Like my credentials from Division II were really, really good. And, I think people saw it as a shame that like, if you're an All-American and a goalie of the year, that you don't continue to like try and pursue it. But at the time, and even now, like Division II athletes, there's never been a D2 athlete on the USA roster. Mm-hmm. And to me, it just felt like a waste. So I was like, I can have a better contribution to lacrosse if I coach. But when I moved back over here, my friend Ash Gloucester, who was on the 2017 World Cup team, we were doing a camp together, and she was like, so, have you thought about playing goalie for England at any point? And I was like, oh, mind you, this was in 2017. So it was like right after, and I had been out of, major lacrosse for 4 years, almost 5 years, 3 years.
Yeah, right.
And so I was like, absolutely not. Like, you're just stop it. Like, that's not something real. I'm not going to do it. Like, I'm not good enough for that. I knew the goalie from before, Sally, and she's like, awesome. I was like, there's no way I'm going to like live up to that. She's like, well, both of our goalies are leaving, so just consider it. And I was like, oh, I don't know. And then somehow I convinced myself that was a really good idea. And I didn't go to the September tryout. I knew I wasn't going to be fit enough at the time. So I was like, is it possible if I could maybe do this a little bit closer to January, December? So they offered me kind of like a pre-trial in November of 2017. And I went to that, and they were like, yeah, we'd love for you to come in and play. You can do your real trial in January. And I was like, oh, okay. And I played with the under 23s and the B team for the first couple months of my career with them. And then kind of the turning point for me is we went to Israel in 2018 alongside the men's World Cup. So we took a team out, and that was when the coaches got to see like me play a little bit more and get to know me a little bit more. So never an intention. I am forever grateful that I've done it. I think it's one of the best experiences of my life. I'm actually stepping away from tens So it's my one World Cup and now I'm done. But I'm continuing with sixes. So that's kind of where my passions led me, is definitely to the sixes side of things.
Cool. You had mentioned that that World Cup being sort of a really important moment for you earlier in the conversation. I'd love to kind of expand on that. What exactly did you learn, or how was it important for you?
So when people ask me about the World Cup, I say it was the best experience of my life, and I never want to do it again because it was so difficult. Like, it's not the physical side of things. Like, your body can take it. You train. Like, that's what you're prepared for. But no one prepares you for the mental side of it, and like how hard it really is on you as a player. And I had gone my whole England career at that point pretty much being a starter. And I didn't play in the Canada game. And that was a huge shock for me. Like, I fully expected to go on the pitch, and at halftime I was like ready to warm up, and my coaches kind of just didn't say anything to me, and I was like, okay, well, I guess that's that. Like, I'm not going in. And it was really hard. Thank God the cameras like didn't pan to me on the sideline, because my helmet was on, and the reason I kept my helmet on was because I was crying, like trying to hold it in. And it was because that expectation hadn't been set ahead of time. Like, this will never be against Brittany. Like, Brittany was sick. Yeah. I don't think I could ever do some of the things that she did, especially like in our Australia game. This had to come down to like communication and from the coaches. And that was a conversation that I had with them afterwards. Like, you have to be an adult afterwards and say, okay, like, this happens. I don't like it. I'm still not happy about it, but we're going to talk about it, and we're going to make sure that doesn't happen the next time. And I think that's, for me, like, if it had been 10 years ago, I would have never been able to do that. I would have felt really intimidated, but I'm older, I'm wiser, and I have a lot of experience. And I think for me, it was like, okay, I am 30 years old. I can go talk to my coaches about how I'm feeling. And that was really important. Like, being able to go and talk to them about how I was feeling was key. And that's where I learned about myself. Like, I am strong. I am someone that can like go head on and deal with confrontation, even though I don't like it. And I can fix the problems that are there. Now, it might not be fix the problem in the way that people assume it would be. Like, doesn't mean I'm going to play in the next game. Right. But I fixed the communication between coaches and I. So I knew the expectations. I knew I might not play in the USA game. I did play in the USA game, and I was so thankful for it. But I wasn't upset when I didn't go in at halftime. Do you know what I mean? Like, I was like, okay, that's my job now. Like, my job is to be everything on the sideline, is to like scream my little heart out, to make sure whoever is off has everything that they need, whether that is emotional support, their water being filled, like a gummy from my backpack, like whatever it was, that was me. And my role changed. And that's what I learned about myself. Like, I am the carer in a lot of ways. I became like a little bit of a mom. And I'm okay with that. And I think that's actually what made, like, having a medal is amazing, but that game is not going to be like the highlight of the World Cup for me, because the highlight is going to be knowing that I served my teammates in the best way possible, no matter what that looked like, and accepting that. And like, it's the know your role, do your role. And it was definitely hard. Like, I will not lie to anyone and say that it was a cakewalk and that it was easy. Like, you have teammates who are upset about things, you're upset about things, and you just kind of have to say, I understand. Like, let's talk about it together. And instead of being the person that's like, well, I'm worse off than you, like, I didn't even step on the field. Instead, you say, yeah, I get it. Like, come cry. It's okay. Like, we're all in this together. And once you get it out, you're going to be so much better tomorrow than you were today. And how I made people feel is much more important to me than like any of the goals that I saved on the field.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, that's amazing. And I mean, we talked about the life skills earlier, like such an amazing life skill just to like, have a problem with your
Yeah.
coach or something going on and just be able to approach them in like, a calm, I guess,
Yeah.
somewhat non-emotional way. Maybe there's a little bit of emotions going, but you're not like
Definitely
crying.
emotion.
Or you're not crying, right? When you're talking to them, or you're not like losing your temper, right? It's a conversation. And yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I have a lot of goalies when I do some of these training events, and they'll be like, my coach does this and my coach does that. How do I get them to stop? And I'm like,
Talk to them.
have you talked to them?
Yeah.
Okay. All
That's
right.
the
First,
one.
right. So yeah, I think that's an awesome skill.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. Absolutely. I
yeah.
think you just, you have to be that way because there's no other way. Like there's no saying that you can't be angry. Like feel your emotions, literally feel them all. They are valid, whatever you're feeling. Um, and like you're allowed to go and cry. Like the next morning I had one of my teammates go, "Were you punching your bed last night?" And I was like, I may have been punching the pillow because I was just really angry.
Yeah.
And like let it all wash over you because then it's out, it's gone. Like the next day, you've got nothing left of that emotion. And it's okay. You're going to be tired, but you can go back at it and you're just like, I'm a clean slate now. And you wipe it clean.
Yeah. Beautiful. What about playing with some of the best talent in the world
Oh my gosh.
at that tournament? I mean, you mentioned Brittany Reed, who I still need
Yeah.
to get on. I need to get her on the podcast.
Yes. Get her on. She's a
Yeah.
good chat. Let me tell you, she's very
Okay.
funny.
She just had a baby, so congratulations to her and her
Yes.
partner. So
Yes.
that's the delay at the moment, but
I
anyway, we'll get her on one day. But anyway, playing with her, I mean, you've got goalie legends, field player
Yes.
legends. Talk to me a little bit
Yeah.
about just being amongst such talent. What did you take away from that?
I've had the pleasure of playing with these people for the last 4.5 years. They've all played together for so much longer. Like some of them grew up together
Mm-hmm.
and played in the same clubs since they were kids. And I came into that really late. So for me, it was a little bit of a like transition trying to like make friends with these people, but it helped that I was closer in age to a lot of them. But playing with them on the field is just seamless. Like it doesn't matter what kind of background you have, like you can just sink into it and it works. At least that's the experience that I had. Like I know, like I can look up and see Chloe Chan, and I know that Emma Oakley is going to be at my right side no matter what happens in the defense. Like I know exactly how they're going to shift. I know Laura Merrifield is going to absolutely barrel down the field, or like she's going to place a draw where she wants it to be, or it's just going to be like a huge personality for us to keep us motivated. Like I never doubt when Hump or Meg are on the line, like that they're going to get it in. And to watch them is so inspiring because even though I am experienced and in my own right, I finally accepted that I am at the top of my game. They're still incredible, and like
Yeah.
I look up to them in every way, and like their work ethic and how they talk to one another and how they talk to everyone else on the team. Like if anything, it's when you're a new player coming in, you look up to them because they work really hard, but they're also so incredibly nice.
Hmm.
And they'll like push you to the ground on the field, and then they'll be like, "Oh, how are you, buddy? Like, it's fine." And you're like, "Oh my God, I'm great. Thanks." Like forgetting the fact that they just kicked you and you're fine. Like it, I don't know how to explain it. Like they are just incredible people. Like I couldn't ask for better people to play alongside. And incredibly talented, obviously. Like they all come from amazing backgrounds.
Yeah. Love it. Awesome. Well, it just sounds like such an amazing experience. Just watching that and hearing all these stories from the World Championships. I'm definitely going. I'm from California, so I'm going to go to the World Championships in San Diego for the men on the men's
Yeah.
side. Check it out. Should be awesome. Any other good stories we need to hear about coming out of the World Championship?
Oh gosh.
There was, if I'm not mistaken, there was a broken head incident that got resolved at the last minute. No, you got the new Warrior head, right?
Oh my gosh. Okay, so I had a real big panic because I was playing with the Nemi 3,
Uh-huh.
which I love, but obviously not approved for women at the international, well, really any stage, but here in England, no one was going to pay attention to that. So here I am with my heads, and I get an email like, oh, just so you know, the NEMI 3 never got approved. So we thought it was going to, but it didn't. And so we're going to have to like find something for you. So I'm like, oh my God, all of my sticks are a NEMI 3. So what the heck am I going to do? So we get out to the World Cup, and thankfully, like Jess Slater from Brian and the team, they had a QS ready for me to be picked up. So the night before our first game, and I panicked. I had Britt like panic buy me another head from Universal Lacrosse. And yeah, it was a String King one, because like I had used it before and I knew that it threw a little bit similar to like the NEMI 3. But I took both of my stringings out and then put them both into the new heads the night before. And it was like the last stress that I needed. And my fingers were so sore the next day. But to be honest, like I think it was good because it kept my brain off of any like nerves that I was going to have. Yeah. So it's just something to do. Like, thankfully it wasn't a new venture for me. It wasn't like my first time stringing sticks. Like I've strung my sticks in the past. So it was fine. But also you're like, oh my God, how could this happen? Like everything I could imagine is going wrong. But then it's like, okay, well, the worst things happen, so it's fine. And then you just move on. And then the next worst thing happens. You're like, actually, that wasn't so bad. And then you just keep going, and it doesn't become like the worst thing in the world anymore because you've got other stuff to focus on. But yeah, oh God, Stringageddon. But I have a second QS head now. It's come in the mail from head office. So really excited to use it. They strung it up really, really nicely for me at UK Lacrosse. So.
Awesome. Yeah, they sent me one as well, a new QS.
Yeah, I saw it.
So yeah, thanks to those guys. It's got a new throat guard. Do you grip the throat in your top hand setup? Are you hand on the plastic?
So I am. And I think the transition was actually a little bit difficult for me from the 3 to the QS, because the 3 obviously is more smooth. There's not the lip there. So
right.
It feels more like using the Eclipse for me in terms of like the throat, which I wasn't a huge fan of when I used the Eclipse a couple times, but I have gotten used to it. And now I don't even notice, like, because yeah, I'm definitely right at the top. I don't have any like room for space.
Yeah. Got it. I would love to hear about the state of lacrosse as a sport in England. I'm currently living in Argentina, and if you walk down the street where in the city I'm at with a lacrosse stick, it's like, you get looks, right? I have to imagine it's a little more popular, a little more well known than that. But yeah, talk to me about the state of the sport as a whole in that country.
Yeah, so I would say we're probably at the best we've ever been in terms of development, and obviously like securing our second bronze medal.
Right.
However, it is still very much an elite sport. So like if you aren't privileged enough to go to a private school, you're probably not going to play, or you're going to start playing when you're in college. So that side of things really, really needs some work. We don't really offer clubs at a junior level. So clubs are pretty much for seniors. There are like junior sections of this dotted around, but the continuation of play, I would say, is better here, like as an adult, because there's just more opportunities than there was in the US when I was living there. Like once you were done with college, you were kind of done. You might like play summer pickup,
right?
But there wasn't going to be, a continuous league running almost all year round. That being said, it needs to expand. It needs to expand to like state schools and just areas that don't have the affluence to be a part of lacrosse. So there's still that problem in the US, I would say, less so than maybe when I first started playing. Like it was considered a private school sport. It was always people that were affluent and had money, because the equipment was expensive. Right. And the equipment, it's still really expensive. Like, yes, you can be a great lacrosse player and use not the top of the line lacrosse stick. However, you've got parents that are willing to shell out 250 pounds, almost around $300 for a stick for their, ninth grader. That's obviously, they're going to be a little bit more confident and they're going to be able to develop their skills with the current tools that are on the market. Versus the kid that's like using the De Beer Apex that their mom passed down to them when she played in school. Nothing against the De Beer Apex, okay? It was a classic of its time, but it still needs to go a long way, especially if we want to keep turning out like incredible teams that play at these championships. So for me, it needs to have more money investment, but that also comes down to the government. And we have a sport lottery fund, and it's based on like how you perform on the world stage. It depends on like what kind of money you get. That loosely, that's what it's like. Yeah. And it's typically sports that receive that funding are the ones that have a little bit more success. So like lacrosse is a bit hard because you have to have a stick. For us, you have to have goggles, you have to have a mouse guard, like you've got to have the right footwear, at least on the girl side. And there's other sports that are far more accessible. So like rugby, you just need cleats. Football, you just need a ball, you just need cleats. Then you get obviously the sports like cricket and stuff like that, but the clubs are so developed that you never really need to buy your own equipment. You can always borrow. So accessibility is still huge here. It will take time, but it is getting better. It is getting better. And a lot of us coaches are trying to like push for more to happen, especially in the committees. In the community, sorry. Awesome.
That's good to hear. Yeah. Well, I put on some, training events, and every once in a while, like a British goalie sends me a video. There's a young girl. Yeah. She's like, I'm from London, actually. And went on and on about, the training was great. And oh man, it's just so cool. So yeah, it's just awesome to see it growing. And yeah, those problems that you mentioned are probably pretty common to any absolutely country outside of the US and Canada that's like trying to grow, a lacrosse program. It's expensive sport.
It's so expensive. Yeah. And I find, a lot of the goalies here, if I have a really good one, I recommend that they go and, well, this is really any player that is good. I recommend that they go and do a tournament season in the US. Like you can be that random kid that goes and plays for a club team, because club teams are always looking for people to come and pick up. And I think that's really beneficial for them to experience lacrosse in the US. It is at such a high level, especially at those younger ages. Like it's much more competitive than it is here. There's a bigger depth of players. So the experience that you get is so valuable. And then they end up bringing it back here and, showing it to their friends or telling their coaches about what it was. And that brings the interest. And I don't want to say like the US is the answer. It's not, because eventually we're going to get to a point where we've got to start from within a little bit more. But if they can experience it, we still encourage people, if they can get on a roster at a US college and then bring that experience back, that's so valuable to the building of our programs, and equally the building of, our senior programs and our under 23s and our under 20s. Like, I'm kind of fearful for the under 20 World Cup, because like the Canadians and the Americans are going to be absolutely hench, because they're going to have that experience in college already. And, it's not going to be the same for the other countries. Like it's going to be unreal and awesome to watch, but also such a battlefield to try and like even the playing fields for other young players.
Yeah. I know exactly what you're talking about. We're recording this on November 28th. World Cup's going on right now. And anytime I see like a US soccer player, football, right? Yeah. And they play club in England, I'm like, yes, right? Like,
Yeah, there's a,
it's kind of like that. I mean, that's, what you're talking about. Like,
yeah,
they've got stronger clubs. Let's admit the US probably has stronger lacrosse
absolutely.
clubs. And so if you can go over there and kind of get that experience, play with the best,
Yeah.
learn a bunch and bring it back. Yeah. Let's,
Yeah.
you got a few more minutes? We're already well past an hour.
Yeah, I
Okay,
do.
let's
Don't
break it
worry.
down. So if there's a young goalie, living in the UK, right?
Hmm.
And they go, all right, I want to play in the US. How do we make
Yep.
this happen? How do we do this? Let's give them some, like, as much detail as we can.
Right. So the biggest thing that they're going to need to do is film themselves playing in competitive matches. I typically, if like I'm giving them the advice, which we have a couple goalies currently trying to go through recruitment, the more that you can get yourself playing for a senior level club and filming that, it's going to be better than you playing at your like under 15 level or your under 16 level, because you're playing against grown adults. And if you can show that you're making saves against like Claire Ferrum or Laura Warren from Wales, or like those people that are on the world stage already, and you're playing alongside them, that bodes really well. And
Mm-hmm.
not just like you're playing alongside them, but you're either being really successful or you're blending and making it your own. So yeah, filming, making sure that you're playing for a club outside of school. Equally, you can, a lot of them know this, but they can come talk to me about the recruitment. I have parents that email me all the time because I've gone through being recruited as well as being the recruiter for NCAA. So I understand the process. And
Right,
yes, it's
right.
changed slightly, since I left school and since I was recruiting, but in essence, it's all the same. And, you know, if they have the time and if they have the money, go to the US and just go to all the schools that you can, like do a road trip if it's possible.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, that is something that isn't accessible to everyone. So if you can't do that, there's obviously virtual tours. You
Yep.
can, if you're of the right year, you can talk to the coaches, send them an email. Like coaches love getting emails from really eager kids. I loved it as a coach because it's like, "Ooh, who are you?" And I can go look them up. And you never know. And I do give them realistic advice. A lot of them are like, "Ooh, I want to play for Maryland and I want to play for UNC and I want to play for
Right.
Northwestern." And I'm like, right, let's just breathe for a minute, because even if I was coaching goalies in the US, I would still want them to have a realistic expectation. So I tell them first to think about what they want to study. That's huge. Like if you go to a school just for lacrosse and you don't think about your academics, you may end up hating it and you have nothing. And that happens to a lot of athletes, not just in the lacrosse world, but across all sports. You get to school, you think that the sport is the only thing you wanted to go for, and then if you get injured, if your grades aren't good enough, if something just happens and you're not able to play, or maybe you sit on the bench because it's your first year, are you going to like that school? Are you going to like the program you were in? Are you going to like what the city or town around you offers? Because that's far more important to the longevity of your career and your enjoyment, especially if you're having to pay a lot of money to go to school.
Mm-hmm.
The last thing I recommend they do is always come up with a letter that they send to all the coaches. It's just like it's very similar to what the kids in the US are doing to get recruited. The only thing is they don't necessarily have the time to go over and play. So that film is really key. That's my biggest one. Film your best moments. Don't make it crazy. You don't need like bubble letters telling them your name. Like just send them the clips. No music. Just send them the good stuff, because they don't want to sift through the other things. Like they don't need Nicki Minaj starships in the background. Like they just want to see you play. It doesn't have to be fancy. Like they're not like, you're not going to impress them with your music choice or your
There you
design,
go.
like that
Yeah.
kind of stuff. And so like simple, that's what it is. So it's film, come talk to me if you need to, or any of us that have gone through the recruitment process. Find out what schools you like, what you want to study, and then we kind of take it from there. And you contact those coaches. That's it. Just send a letter of interest. That's it.
Love it.
Really simple.
Love
Really
it.
simple.
and keep working on your game, right?
Yes, obviously that's in there. That's assumed. Come on.
Yeah. No, totally. They're worth mentioning. I mean, you know, the best way to get recruited is to be a great goalie.
Yes, absolutely.
And include Nicki Minaj in your background.
Well, you know,
I'm just kidding.
it's obviously what everybody wants.
There you go. Katie Greenwood, thank you so much for coming on the show. And just hearing your passion for the game has got me really pumped up. So it's been a pleasure chatting with you. This was awesome. You're coaching now. Yeah. Tell us a little bit about what you're up to these days.
Yeah. So I am coaching at high school. So Bedford Girls School. None of them will listen to this, so it doesn't matter if I shout out them. But yeah, so that's where I'm at currently. And I do some coaching for a local club called Hitchin. And I'm looking to dip my fingers into a few other things here in the UK. It's no secret, but I am applying for the under-20 head coaching role here in the United Kingdom.
Let's go.
We'll see how it goes. I have big aspirations. I'm kind of on a forced hiatus at the minute. I really need to kind of like do something a little bit different for now, and then come back when I'm enjoying lacrosse a little bit more. I did play box recently, loved it.
As a goalie?
Not as a goalie.
Got it. Yeah.
Not as a goalie. I don't think I could ever limit myself that way. No offense to I think box goalies are maybe more insane than normal goalies. I just don't think I could ever do it. Like, I would try to do way too much, and really, it's just like shrug my shoulders. Yeah, it's like that's all I need to do. But I'd be like falling all over myself. No, really enjoyed that. Hope to do a lot more of that. And then we have the Fly coming up, which is our like kind of not really pro, but drafted league for sixes. So, but yeah, so big thing is under 20s, hoping to get a role there. If anyone on ELA is listening, just
there you go. Send them. We'll send them this podcast. I would
That's
hire
it.
You got my vote of confidence.
Thanks. That's so kind.
Yeah. I don't know how much weight I hold with what's the organization, the ELA, but
ELA, yeah. I mean, you never know.
Never know. You really never know.
Opinion is an opinion. Yeah, I know. You never know.
There you go. Well, Katie, like I said, thank you so much. If you had to leave the goalies out there with a final piece of advice, what would that be?
Ooh. Know how to tweak and string your own sticks. Don't rely on someone else, mainly because of my World Cup like craziness. But if your stick gets too wet, like know what you like, know your setup, know, are you someone that doesn't, sorry, I don't know what happened there. Yeah, know what you like. Are you a U shooter? Are you a straight? Are you a ghost? Like whatever it is, like be able to do it yourself, because you might have to tweak it, and it's okay. Like that. Yeah, know your setup, make sure you can do it. And if you don't know how to do it, watch a lot of videos, because there's a ton. And equally, any of those amazing stringers out there will give you advice.
100%. Katie, thank you so much.
Thank you.